How are you doing today? How to overcome fear with your horse. Have you ever felt like you want to finally get great rides with your horse, but it's going to be too risky because your horse is just too spooky? Have you ever maybe gone to the gate to get your horse, to bring your horse out to ride, and you have that awkward pause or those butterflies that are building within your stomach and they're screaming to you like, what if something happens? What if this? What if that? What about if you ever feel that burn, that deep down burn of frustration because you absolutely know that you can do this? And it seems genuinely within your reach, but somehow you're not able to communicate clearly with your horse and in a way that helps your horse to be relaxed, to be calm, and have an enjoyable time with you. Have you ever been tempted to just give up because you find your mind sliding into the place, well, maybe I'll just get another horse, or maybe this horse isn't meant for me, or maybe this just won't work for me? And have you ever maybe gotten off of what you thought was a pretty good ride? You felt like it was pretty perfect for you too, but it didn't feel amazing. So if this is you, if you can answer yes to any of those questions, then you're in the right place, because we're going to talk about fear and overcoming fear with your horse today. So hi, my name is Chris Adderson. I'm the founder of the Harmony for the Horse online riders course and program. And if you're coming on live, let me know where you're coming from and let me know what is your greatest fear with your horse. Put a note below, because I want you to interact here. I want this to be interactive so I can hear what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what you would like to chat about, and weave that into my discussion here in my training that I'm doing today. All right, if you're on the replay, also feel free to put notes in for me below, because I always come in afterwards, answer questions, and chat with you. So we've helped a lot of students successfully overcome all of these issues that I talked about at the beginning and more. And so on today's live, I'm going to share with you how we actually do that. And if you'd like to get notified when I go live so that you get notifications, then you can click on those 3 dots up in the corner there. Do that right now. There'll be a drop-down arrow, and you can click on that to get notified. Or you can also press the bell icon, and that will get you notifications. All right, so my question, as I've already stated for you today already, is for this day is, what is it that you most fear with your horse? Put a note for me below. What is it that makes you feel like you just say to yourself, I don't think I know what to do. If this happens, if my horse decides that there's something really spooky in the corner, will I know what to do? Maybe I won't know what to do. Put that as a note for me below. So, and I want to give you an example here of what I'm talking about. I was working with one of our students a little while ago, and she had a really nice horse, right? But she was always explaining to me that her horse was hot, her horse was spooky, and she was just generally scared to ride, especially on windy days and rainy days. Those two things. And she talked to me about how she didn't know when it was coming, but she would actually avoid riding on those days. So it was like there's this little pea inside her horse's mind, or somewhere inside her horse's body, that was rolling around. And when this rainy, windy day happened, that pea would really start to roll around and get ready to explode. And this is what she said to me. And it was really actually like pouring rocket fuel into a car and not having a steering wheel, right? It's going to get you nowhere really fast. right? You can burn a lot of money and time trying out stuff that doesn't work, right? And confidence, your own confidence. Because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work out there. And so what I noticed, what was happening with her between this rider and this horse, was that she was becoming so fearful that she was turning into saying things like, well, my horse is just having a temper tantrum, or my horse is being really bad and acting up, right? And so what was she doing? She was actually turning it over to her horse, right? And so she had very good intentions. This student had very, very good intentions and was very aware of what she was doing, but she didn't realize the depth of where she was going with this, and where those thoughts, those words, those sentences were coming from. So even though she had great intentions, there were some critical things that were going on deep inside her, and they needed to be addressed before she could do anything with her horse. Before she could even move forward with her horse, those things had to be addressed. And if you don't know this, you're going to end up with horses and therefore rides that are not satisfying, right? So there are those critical things that you need to know about yourself before you can progress with your horse. And the second thing I noticed with her is that she didn't have the knowledge to be able to go deep at the beginning with her horse, right? To tap into the stressors, or I call them buttons, right? Relating to her specific horse. And she also, the third thing I noticed is that she didn't know how to help her horse coordinate her horse's whole body, right? So this is what I did. I asked her this question, and I'm going to ask you this right now. Do you know how to help your horse think through a problem? Do you know what to do when a problem arises? Do you know how to help your horse think through a problem? And you may say, oh, well, that's really simple. Yeah, I know it's right. It's a silly question, but there's so much depth to that question, right? And this is literally the one filter that we use with all of our work with spooky horses and fearful riders, right? Because if you don't know how to help your horse to think through a problem for themselves, it just then becomes down to the aids or its puppetry, right? And that leads to confusion, overwhelm, frustration, and the fear remains. The fear stays there. It stays there within your horse and it stays there within you. So then both of you are not empowered. It's that simple, and it's full of integrity when you approach it this way. So if I'm not teaching you or my students how to do this, then I'm not honoring myself and I'm not honoring my horse or your horse, right? I want my horses to want to work with me. I want my horses to want to be with me and to have a voice and to know that they have a voice, right? I don't want to manipulate them to do things, and I don't want to manipulate them inadvertently to do something that is going to hurt themselves or hurt their bodies, and I don't want to disregard their voice. So that all sounds like should, doesn't it? A should, right? And I don't touch shoulds, right? I refuse to do shoulds, because that's where you get things like sacking out or desensitizing or the one rein stop. Have any of you heard of those things or done those things? Put a note for me below if you can relate to those things. And what that leads to is a robot for a horse, right? A turned off horse, a horse who is succumbing because there's no other choice, and realizing that the horse is realizing they don't have a voice. They have no way to express what's their opinion is, so they just succumb and become obedient. All right. What we need to do instead is we need to change our horse's perspective in a fearful situation, help them to reconnect with their true, soft, honest movement in order to overcome that. All right. If this is making sense for you, put a note for me below and I'll just check my comments and see if I have any comments. Put a note for me below if this is making sense for you, that we want our horses to have a voice. We want our horses to be able to express themselves, and we want to be able to help them to think through a problem. Okay, so now how do we do that? And this is what we do within our program. We have to take our horses from the troubled position to the true soft movement. Okay? From the troubled position to true soft movement. So I have another question for you. Are you crystal clear on that process? Are you crystal clear? Sorry?
Angela Gee, yes, it makes sense. What about the rider fear?
Okay, great. Angela, great to see you here. Thanks for putting a note for me below. It makes sense for you. That's awesome. What about the rider fear? Yes, we are going to get to that. And this is what I'm going to talk about here is the whole process. Because the rider fear, and this is what we do in my program actually, and I mentioned that earlier, is that we need to get to the very basis of why you have that fear. And we sort that out for you. And I'm going to talk about that. It's coming up here. All right, so that's an awesome question. Yes, as riders, we all have fears, don't we? This is something that we have to approach and we have to overcome and we have to address this. All right, so do you know, are you crystal clear on the process to take your horse from their troubled position to their true soft movement? So what I mean by troubled position is, where do they go when they are stressed out? Like, let's say they're thinking that there's something spooky coming behind them. What is it that they do specifically with their body? Do they lift their head, maybe look sharp left and lean on the right shoulder? As an example, what do they do? Right? And are you crystal clear on the process to get them from that place to the true soft movement? Right? Far too often I talk to riders and they just don't know. They just don't know how to do that. And so how's that going to work if you don't know how to do that, right? And it needs to be clarity on the specifics of what your horse needs specifically, right? And only those specifics, not a whole bunch of stuff. So it needs to be chunked down to the very specifics, right? So that you're not bombarding your horse with too much information, especially during a time that there's a stressor, right? So this is when your horse will say to you, I trust you. I can do this. I'm ready to turn loose to you, even though there's that stressor happening. Right? If you know this process, this is what your horse will say to you. And if you can't dial that in, right? And if you are fearful yourself because you don't know how to dial that process in, then it'll just continue. And it'll haunt you. It'll haunt you with your fears, and it'll haunt your horse with their fears. All right. The second thing I want to ask you, are you crystal clear on what your horse's trouble position is? Right? I gave you an example of one possible one. And comparatively, do you know what your horse's true soft movement is? If you don't know those two extremes, then how can you go from one to the other, right? If you aren't able to articulate this super clearly, and this is one of the things we do in our program, right? We help you to find out what this is specifically for your horse. If you're asking them to do something that you don't have the knowledge of, right, then that doesn't make any sense. How is that going to work? Right? So this is a very big realization. The realization of what your horse's troubled position is, what you have now, and where you want to go. What is it that you're looking for? If you don't know those, then you won't be able to tap into it, right? And then if you add multiple stresses on top of that, maybe your horse is spooking, maybe it's windy, maybe it's raining, maybe you have a bit in the horse's mouth, maybe there's another distraction. If you add multiple stresses to that situation, you're still going to be stuck. You're still going to get no results or minimal results. And you're still going to be faced with crippling fear, right? Wondering when that next spook is going to come around the corner. And that's no fun, right? It's no fun to ride like that. So if this is making sense to you, let me know. Put a note for me below. If this makes sense to you, that you need to know the process from troubled position to true soft movement. You need to know what the troubled position is, and you need to know what the true soft movement is. If that makes sense to you, put a note for me below. Because I want to clarify this for you of what I think is going on here from studying many horses myself, rescuing many horses and working with all of their issues, right? Helping them to overcome their past, helping them to find a way for them to think through a problem that they have, and working with my own personal horses as well as helping my students through this thing, through this, the rehabbing part of it, and teaching my students how to teach their horses how to do this. And I've given you just a little taste here, right? This is just a little taste. It's just to get you thinking about this. But when we do this with our students in our program, we have exercises that we do in great detail, right? And what we're doing is we're basically figuring out who you are, right? How you relate to your horse, how you communicate with your horse, where you come from. And we use that blueprint of who you are to help you to overcome your fears. Overcome your fears personally, overcome your fears with your horse. And then it's perfect, right? It's perfect for you, because if we can use your blueprint to help you to overcome your fears and overcome your fears with your horse, then you can think your way through a problem, right? You can think your way through your fears. Your fears are not controlling you. You're able to think your way through that and then be able to give that to the horse. And that's how you overcome rider fear. That's the best way to do it. All right, so the third thing I want to mention too is the different states. Okay, so we have physical, mental, and emotional states, don't we? Right? There's nothing new about that. That's common knowledge. But the issue comes with us, and we're merging our horses into our human world, right? The issue comes, and it's related to the continuum. All right? So we need to know where our horses are on the continuum of this merge to being in a partnership with a human, right? A horse-human partnership. Where on the continuum are you and your horse? Do you know where you are, first of all, right? So this is the continuum, okay? We have the place where we want to end up, which is the most awesome place, right? You can go pick out your horse from the pasture, know that you'll have an awesome ride every time. It'll be fulfilling, it'll be fun, it'll be satisfying, it'll be liberating. Then you have the other end of the continuum where it's like raw. The experiences are scary, it's spooky, there's confusion around it, right? This is where we don't want to be. We want to be in the awesome place. That's where we want to be, in the happy place. All right, so where are you and your horse on that continuum? And this is where we can evaluate the 3 states, right? So in our program, we do this too. We help you to see where you're going and how you can help your horse to see the way, the process that your horse needs to think their way through a problem that arises, right? And find the comfort. Because when the horse realizes that they can think their way through a problem and there's comfort on the other side, they can do that for themselves. If we condition that, they can do that for themselves. And then we don't have to do it so often. Yes, there will be times when we have to remind them, but we know the process. We know where we're coming from. We know where we're going. We know their troubled position. We know all the events that happen, and we know where we're going to. We know what we're looking for. So we know the process in between too. So then we can be the guide. And then the horse starts to realize that there's comfort within their body, right? There's not a pain. They're not having physical pain within their body because they're straining in this troubled position. They then start to move in their most beautiful, pure, soft movement with pole flexion, with longitudinal flexion, with the lifting of the sternum and the lifting of the spine, with the pelvis dorsal-ventral flexion. They start to move as a unit, and you can show them how to do that. And you can show them how to think through the problem when they're spooked and they instinctively go to that place where they always go because it's familiar. You can show them how to get out of that. You can show them that there is a way in the first place because you know the way. All right, so back to the states, the mental, physical, and emotional. We are going to evaluate those 3 states in any given situation. And always, always have the partnership which is involving conversation, right? There's always conversation between 2 beings. If that's shut off, if that's closed off, then you don't have a true partnership. And you evaluate the states, right? So that your horse can see what's waiting for them on the other side, right? If they are in an emotional state, you've helped them through that. You've guided them through that. So then they can see what's on the other side for them, right? What's that next blade of grass that's juicy and softer, that's waiting for them because they're with you, right? And then they'll figure that out for themselves. Let me know if that makes sense to you, because you're there to be a guide for your horse, right? You're there to guide them to that awesome place on the continuum. They may be somewhere along that continuum where it's not awesome, right? They don't want fear. They don't want anxiety. Horses want peace. Horses want to get along. I strongly believe that. Horses are not bad. They're not being misbehaving. They're not having temper tantrums. They're just communicating. And in order to communicate, you have to listen and you have to have a conversation back and forth, right? In order to jump from the listening part to having the conversation part, you need to know everything that I just talked about here, right? Everything that I just explained to you. That's how you have the conversation part. Horses are generally hopeful beings, unless we as humans drill that out of them. And I see this all the time, where horses have lost their hope. They come with hope in this world, in with humans. They're domesticated animals, right? They're not wild, they're domesticated. Horses are domesticated, so they're used to being around humans. They're born, they come with a hope that they will get along with us, unless we drill that out of them. So if you'd like help with anything that I've mentioned here, if you'd like support with the that you're experiencing with your horse, then there'll be a link somewhere around this video. Find the link and click on the link, and we'll see how we can help you with your horse, because it's not a mystery, right? It all makes total sense. There is a process. There is a way. There is the troubled position to the pure, true movement. It's there. It exists. And the horse hopes to get there. The horse wants to get there with you. They're just being a horse. So if that resonates with you, find the link somewhere around this video, and someone on my team or I will be happy to chat with you about what's happening with your struggles, with your fears, with your horse, and how you can finally resolve them so that you can have rides that are totally fulfilling and predictable, right? You're not at the mercy of what if. So thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you, and have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you next time. If you have some questions, feel free to put them in the notes for me below, and I will be sure to answer them. If you're on the replay, do the same here. Put notes for me below and I'll answer your questions. All right. See you next time. Bye for now.